Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Finally Feel Free event. Today, I have a really special guest, Nicholas Pearson, who has been immersed in all aspects of the mineral kingdom for more than 3 decades. And as one of the leading voices in crystal healing today, Nicholas offers a unique blend of science and spirituality alongside a grounded, practical approach to working with crystals. And he is an internationally renowned speaker and the award-winning author of nearly a dozen books, including Crystals for Psychic Self-Defense, Crystal Basics, and Stones of the Goddess. And Nicholas lives in Orlando, Florida. Nicholas, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's so great to have you. And I know that this conversation is going to be really interesting because it's all about protecting your light, crystals for psychic self-defense, and just psychic protection. So let's just dive straight in. And I just want to start off by asking you, like, why would someone need psychic protection? Or is there, or how does somebody know that they're under like psychic attack or anything like that?
So, first and foremost, we exist in a sea of energies. Everything with material form is, at its core, not so solid. It's made out of particles in motion. When we break those particles down small enough, they stop behaving like solid matter. So, when we say everything is energy, it's not just this kind of metaphysical cliche. It's a very literal reality. And some folks are maybe especially more sensitive to different kinds of energies, different frequencies or bandwidths of them than others. So psychic self-defense isn't always about when we're under attack. It's about knowing our needs, being able to nurture us, and being able to enforce healthy boundaries so we can navigate the world. Now, signs that we might be experiencing some kind of psychic harm, whether that is intentional, accidental, circumstantial, or otherwise, they're many and varied. It can be a feeling of fatigue and run down. It can be, recurring dreams. There's an expression that we sometimes use called being like out of step with time, like you're never in the right place at the wrong time. It could be persistent, recurring bad luck. There's a whole host of things that could indicate that maybe our psychic defenses, our energy defenses aren't up and running as smoothly as possible. It is, however, important to note that some of these symptoms or signs can overlap with other things in life. So the really important thing to look for is whether or not they're tied to something a little bit more mundane. If we're suddenly perpetually tired, is it because we've started staying up later, or is it because our psychic defenses are a little thin these days? So we have to look for that kind of cause and effect in relationship. And when we can rule out the normal stuff, then it's a time to maybe look a little deeper.
Mm. And it's so interesting that you say that some things can be accidental or circumstantial. So it doesn't mean if there's something going on psychically with you that someone has intentionally put an attack on you. What's an accidental way that you could be under psychic attack as well?
Yeah, so there's I think of psychic harm as a big umbrella. And of course, we've got formal psychic attack and in many cultures, ritual curses and the evil eye and other things that might be more intentional. But there are a lot of, we'll say, environmental and circumstantial influences to our energetic health and well-being. This can be just being in a crowded place. This can be folks who identify as highly sensitive people, psychics, healers, empaths, the list goes on, who might be a little more vigilant of other people's emotions. It's not that their emotions are inherently bad, they're just not yours. So they don't sync up with yours, and that can feel uncomfortable. We can enter a space where a heated argument or some other big emotional release took place. And even though the people who were, producing those emotions might not be around, their energies can be. So there's so many different ways that we can experience psychic harm, like in really broad strokes. So I think it's really important to remind ourselves that although intentional psychic attack exists, it is appreciably uncommon when compared to all of the decidedly more accidental forms of psychic harm that we experience. Another player in this that we really have to take into account is ourselves. We are the source of we are the number one source of psychic harm in our own lives. Think of that script that plays in your head every time you leave the house 5 minutes too late, or you don't meet a deadline, or you're under too much pressure, or you don't perform up to your normal standards. How many times does that inner critic, that inner saboteur rear its head? And those energies also create psychic harm. So when we talk about psychic self-defense, what we're trying to do is really approach a broad spectrum of energies that can be disruptive or intrusive. It's not about them being morally or philosophically good versus evil. It's about, are they aligned with where we're headed or are they not?
Yeah, that's a great answer. So, what are some of the crystals that we can use just for protection? Protection for ourselves and also protection for our homes as well.
Yeah, there's so many options. Hundreds, literally hundreds. So a few that I find really effective for my practice include things like labradorite. So I've got, a nice little flashy bit here. So labradorite is a feldspar mineral. It forms with this really kind of unique twinned structure. So it's got these two very closely related chemical formulas that don't quite mix perfectly. So they twin and make these little layers that are strongly bonded together called laminae. And as light tries to pass through those layers, some of it gets filtered out, some of it will pass easily. And it kind of creates a selectively permeable membrane. Different wavelengths, different frequencies, different vibrations out there can't pass that energetic barrier that labradorite helps us enforce. And others can come and go very easily. So, this is nice when we need a kind of breathable protection. If we seal ourselves up, then we kind of stew in our own juices all day, and that's not fun for anybody, especially because we have to remember that a potential and probable source of psychic harm is ourselves. We need to have the option to let things out, let things breathe. Another one that I really enjoy for my own kind of energetic health and well-being is fluorite. I've got a little piece of what they call blue John fluorite from Derbyshire in England right here. Fluorite is super colorful, comes in all shades, is found worldwide. It's a really wonderful and accessible mineral. This is something that we can use to kind of disentangle those intrusive energies from the aura. Think of like those colors and bands that we frequently see in fluorite as representing its ability to kind of sift through all the layers of our energy body and find the things that don't belong there. The fluorite exhibits something called perfect cleavage in three directions. So when it breaks along kind of natural weak points in its crystal structure, it will almost always form things like cubes and octahedron, these really perfect geometric forms. And so it helps us kind of cleave off the energies that don't belong to us so we can return to our original blueprint of perfection. Although it's a fairly soft mineral, we might not use it as a like wall to keep things out. It's really good for our psychic hygiene, for the kind of cleansing and clearing and aligning with our true purpose. Another one that's really popular, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, is black tourmaline. This is another one that sits by my desk all the time. So tourmaline, unlike quartz, is not just one species of mineral, but is actually like a family of things that are a little less related, chemically speaking. Same kind of general um, we'll say the general composition, they're all borosilicates, they're all cyclosilicates, but we can mix and match some of the ingredients. And this member of the tourmaline group is the one that has the most iron in it. Now, iron throughout folklore has long been associated with protection, defense. It's a metal that in alchemy is associated with the energies of the planet Mars, who, is the god of war, the god of battle, the god of ambition and drive as well. So iron-rich minerals have this ability to fortify our defenses. But there's something really interesting about its crystal structure as a cyclosilicate, meaning the silica inside it forms little ring-shaped bits that the other ions are attached to. These almost kind of create a like molecular channel or throughway. And this is a crystal that reinforces our connection to the earth. It's almost like making sure that we're plugged into the grounding part of the outlet so that we have a safe way to discharge what doesn't serve us. It's not just about keeping energies out, but the energies that we do experience. It's like having a safe outlet for them. So they can be released, transformed, and transmuted by the earth herself. Her energy body is far bigger than ours. It can process stuff that we might otherwise have trouble with. And so I think that one is just a phenomenal choice. And I'll give us one more. And this is another very popular one, and that's shungite. So shungite is mostly available from Russia, although there are several deposits in other parts of the world. Some really good geological studies have confirmed it analytically in several other countries now. Shungite is an interesting case. It's kind of a rock of variable composition, and there are a couple different types of it that are out there, but both of these types contain some unusual carbon molecules called fullerenes. And fullerenes create usually either kind of sphere or tube-shaped structures with a kind of hollow netting of carbon molecules. And it's thought that the fullerene tubes that are in this almost act like energetic sponges. They draw things out, they neutralize harm, they kind of isolate those energies so we don't take them on ourselves. A lot of folks who might be sensitive not only to other people's emotions, but maybe to earth energies, to the electromagnetic frequencies of their devices or spaces or other things, find a lot of relief from shungite. It is protective and grounding, but it's not a kind of static, unchanging grounding that makes you feel tethered to one place. It is light and dynamic, and it's almost as if rather than having an anchor attached to you, it's like a little gentle tap on the shoulder that says, "Hey, have you grounded? Would you like to? Do you need help?" And it's right there to support you through that. Because again, by grounding, like we talked about with tourmaline, we reinforce our ability to transmute and transform harmful and disruptive energies. Good psychic self-defense isn't always about putting up a shield that keeps everything out, but it's learning how to transform energies. And crystals are masters at this. So, any crystal, any rock, any mineral, because of its structure, is going to support us in this on one level or another. These four are just a few examples of the, hundreds that are out there that are really specialized in their ability to help us with psychic self-defense.
Great. And then what happens? There's different things that can happen with crystals, right? Crystals can either break or they can somehow go missing. What is happening there? Do they want a break or can we still use them if they, are not in the same structure that we got them in?
So, 9 times out of 10, the reason a crystal breaks is mundane. The reason a crystal goes missing is because we're human beings with fallible memories and short attention spans from time to time. There are exceptions to this rule. Sometimes something happens under really mysterious circumstances, but it is usually pretty few and far between. So I want to address like two parts of this. What happens when the crystal breaks, and also what happens when we try to overinterpret the crystal breaking. So, for example, this piece of shungite, or that tourmaline, or I'm sorry, that labradorite that I held up earlier. These are not their original shapes. These were broken down out of much larger pieces. Even this thing that appears rough and unpolished has still been processed. It's probably been shaped by hammer and chisel. If not by that, then maybe by an industrial crusher, which is a real device. They come in lots of different shapes and sizes, to break it down into, bits of an appropriate size to transport and sell. So what we think of as the complete shape of the crystal is seldom that. Even when I look at something like, one of these kind of rough-ish looking selenite towers, they literally take hammer and chisel to this. This is made out of long threads that can be yards or meters long. So the idea that is kind of tied up to a crystal breaking as making it ineffective or symbolizing something is often tied to our attachment to its shape. The crystal lattice is the crystal lattice. Unless we pulverize it into bits that are just a couple molecules big each, we still have the continuity of its crystal lattice in most of its body. We can still work with the crystal. Its energy is still going to be dictated by that internal structure, even if the external form is not original. Because in most cases, a lot of the, especially polished, but even a lot of the rough stones that we work with, are not in their original form.
Mhm.
They're if we've got something that we're using for like precision crystal healing, we want to do some sort of cord cutting exercise or use a crystal as a kind of wand to direct energy. If its tip breaks off, it'll be less precise. It'll still move energy though. So we just want to be mindful of the application. It's the same kind of principle we see in like design and architecture. Form follows function. So just make sure the form we're using distributes energy in the way we're trying to achieve. But the other piece of this, it's important to note, is the interpretive part. So if we are constantly looking for a reason that things happen, we are constantly seeking opportunities to give our power away. A really good example of this is the hematite rings that we see on the market. They are brittle, they're fragile. They're actually not even made from hematite. They're made out of a synthetic material that is very, very similar to hematite, but at one point in its recent lifespan was a powder that got compressed and annealed. So they're just brittle. They're prone to breaking. They have tiny imperfections that we can't even see with the naked eye in most cases. Um, and real life causes them to break. They just have normal wear and tear. They will always do this. So when we see, the popular myth on the internet that one of those hematite rings break, it's because they took a zap of negative energy. Then when we experience that, we go, oh, someone is out to get me. Some harm is following me. And we go into that fear state. And instead of looking for the most likely answer, which is this is a brittle object with a finite lifespan, we immediately go to the place of fear. We immediately go to the place of, well, I needed this thing to protect me because I'm not good enough to take care of myself. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable enough. And when we work with crystals for protection, for psychic self-defense, they should always be supportive roles. They're there to catalyze the work that we do, not to do it for us. So if we are trying to overinterpret what happens when a crystal breaks, if we seek meaning when the answer is life just happens, one of my beloved calcites many years ago fell off of a shelf. Was it because a blast of negative energy came into my bedroom on that ill-fated day? It was because I'm really bad at hanging shelves. It was not the first time that it fell, and I still put that calcite on there anyway, and it blew into smithereens. So just be mindful when we see those kinds of narratives on the internet. We ask, who does this really serve, and how does it help me? In the case of those hematite rings, who does that narrative serve? The people who manufacture those hematite rings. The more we believe they're protecting us from negative energy when they break, the more likely we are to keep buying them, the more we feel the endless cycle. So you can absolutely work with crystals that are broken. I think good psychic hygiene extends not only to us, but also to our crystals, to our spaces. So when we do break them, you're allowed to have strong feelings about it. I'm still upset about this one beloved calcite that broke longer ago than I'd care to admit, because it was beautiful, and now it is decidedly less beautiful. But it is still a tool that I can use in my practice. It still brings an energy to my space. It still sits in this office right now. So just be willing to be creative when we problem solve if we experience those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's really a great angle that this interview is coming from because most times when you talk about crystals, it's all the way spiritual, but you're also countering in the science, you're countering in just life and all of these things. So that's really important to remember as well because it does balance out. And we're not giving, like you say, like all of our power away to the crystals or something else. So the other thing is we obviously want to take care of our crystals if they help us and support us. So, what about cleansing them? Like, do you have any advice? I know they're all so different. Some like the moon, some like the sun. But is there a way that we can intuitively tap into like when they need to be cleansed and how to cleanse them?
Yeah, this is such a great topic to talk about. So, cleansing, again, if we think of energy in terms of is it aligned with our purpose or not, it takes away this concept of good energy versus bad energy. We don't cleanse our crystals because they've absorbed bad energy any more than we think about using a sponge to wash our dishes. We're not washing away bad dirt. We're just washing away dirt because it doesn't belong on our dishes. So, cleansing our crystals is something that theoretically we ought to do as we're using them pretty frequently, just like we wash our dishes after every meal, on a good day at least. And it's all about finding the method that works with your lifestyle and is also safe for that stone. So there are some methods that are pretty universally safe. Things like sound and smoke, certain kinds of prayer and visualization and breath work are also excellent for cleansing stones, and they work pretty immediately, and we're not going to risk damaging our crystals. Other things can be wonderful energetically, but pose certain risks to certain kinds of stones. Amethyst, for example, will fade in direct sunlight, so sunlight is not your ideal method for cleansing that. Same is true of kunzite and aquamarine and a variety of other brightly colored gems. We can also look at salt. Salt is a universal cleanser and detoxer of energies. But if we put particularly fragile, soft, or porous stones into salt, we can pose hazards. Something like um, opal, which actually contains essential water in its makeup, can have that drawn out, which can lead to cracking, fracturing, loss of color. So many things can happen. Some things are water soluble, some can be damaged by other methods. So we just want to ensure that we look at things like hardness and composition, other factors to make sure that our cleansing technique doesn't injure the stone. A good crystal book will give you some feedback on that. So just take a look at that. And if we ever have questions about whether something is safe for water or salt or sun, you can always to default to one of those methods that is safe for everything like smoke and sound. It doesn't have to be an expensive singing bowl, although those are lovely. You can use some really ancient and primordial sounds, the human voice, the clapping of hands, whatever you've got available to you. If it's done intentionally with enough focus, it'll achieve the results you need.
Amazing. And what about the crystals that we wear like every day? Can we just cleanse them when we cleanse ourselves, like in the shower? Can we just like say an intention, or is there something that we need to like take them off sometimes and give them a break?
I think probably more than the crystals need a break, we need a break. There's this kind of rampant phenomenon in the broader kind of metaphysical and spiritual community where we want to surround ourselves with all of these lovely energies that support us, but also we can lose touch with ourselves. We can maybe forget how to do things on our own, which is a really important skill to have. And I say this as someone who's, a crystalholic. I've always got them nearby, almost always. And yet, I left the house yesterday to do all of the things I needed to do without a single crystal on my person. So every now and then we need the refresh. And for a crystal to perform optimally in an energetic sense, it needs a refresh as well. So if we wear crystals throughout the day, it's probably a good practice to have like a gentle cleansing technique that we can use overnight. I use like a little slab of granite. Some people use selenite. Just ensure that if we're using one kind of stone to cleanse another kind of stone, we still cleanse our cleansing crystal. Selenite is not immune to disruptive energies. It's just really porous and kind of drinks them up from other crystals. So if we go back to that analogy of washing our dishes, if we use the sponge to wash our dishes and we never wash the sponge afterwards, our dishes stop getting clean. So if we never cleanse our selenite, the rest of our crystals stop getting an effective cleanse. But certainly, if we're doing something like that as a gentle overnight cleanse, then maybe once a week, once every other week, depending on how frequently it needs some help, then cleanse your selenite, your slab of granite, your dish of salt, whatever it is that you might be using. Some things which are water safe. A really quick and easy way to clean them is just a gentle little rinse under running water. I like to alternate warm and cool, not super hot or super cold because we don't want to have any thermal shocking. But if I have a water safe strand of beads around my neck, I love to do a water rinse at the end of the day as a gentle cleanse, or at the start of the day. You can pick and choose when you want to do that. But having a regular cleansing practice gives you optimum effects. Regular and frequent don't mean the same thing, though. I hope that our regular practice is also frequent, daily or weekly, but sometimes life gets in the way. And what works for us is going to be different based on our energetic predispositions, our kind of constitution energetically. A good analogy that I can make is I had an old friend who, like every Sunday without fail, had to change the sheets on her bed. Like she could not get into the bed to sleep at night unless those were a fresh pair of sheets. I'm maybe a little less diligent about that. Now, energetically, I have to clean the house by one method or another at least once a week. My friend did not. So, we've got different constitutions, different things that we're sensitive to. So what is regular and frequent for me might be too frequent or not frequent enough for the next person. So just find what works for you and stick to it as best you can.
Yeah. And then when it comes to our homes, what crystal can we use to just protect our space as well? Which is not like everybody stay out, I need protection, like a permeable one.
Yeah, there's so many great choices. I think selenite is a really lovely one. A technique that I teach a lot of people because you can find this inexpensive variety of selenite called satin spar, which is made out of these long, thin fibers. Um, you can get like little flat bars and rods of it that usually fit really nicely above a door frame or in a windowsill, and they look pretty discreet in those places. These help to kind of move energy. That really fibrous structure is great for carrying light. Literally, they're fiber optic. If we put this on a light base, the whole thing changes color because of the way it moves light. But also in a subtle kind of energy sense, maybe light with a capital L, we'll say. They're also great for discharging and moving energy, keeping it from becoming stagnant. So if we place it over or near an entry point, it's almost like this waterfall of energy that we move through when we come through those openings. That kind of dusts us off. It keeps us from carrying so much of the outside world into our inner sanctum. I would usually couple that, however, with some more grounding, stabilizing kind of stones, just that way we get some balance. So you could partner your selenite with something like black tourmaline or hematite or onyx or another grounding stone of your choice. And put the grounding stones maybe in the corners of your spaces because windows and doors are usually on walls, maybe not centered. But then we create kind of a nice container that circulates energy, that anchors things and discharges them, but also blocks out the stuff we don't want to have entering our home.
Great. And you also have a free gift for our audience, which is the Crystal Energy Guide, I think, where science meets magic. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have a recording of an hour-long class. So this is like an intro to how crystals work and why. We'll take a look at things like how their composition, their structure, their formation process influences their energy. We'll talk at a really high level about how these kind of scientific features, these measurable features of crystals interact with energies. And so we can extrapolate from that how subtle energy is also similarly influenced by them. And then it'll introduce you to a handful of like core foundational practices, things like cleansing and programming your stones, tips for choosing the right crystal, so you can take all that information and immediately apply it to your life.
Amazing. Well, Nicholas, thank you so much for being with us here today and opening up the world of crystals, psychic protection, and just, yeah, how we can bring balance into our relationship with crystals and not give our power away. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.